You have cancer. 3 words that change a life forever. We would like to offer another 3 words. Be an overcomer. Welcome to the 1% Podcast, where our conversations with other cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers allows us to give you that extra boost you need to face your challenge head on, live life from a new perspective, and forge a path that keeps you moving free and clear. Now, welcome your host and cancer survivor, Truett Taylor.
Welcome to today's episode of the 1% Podcast, the show where we interview young adults who are battling or surviving an unexpected cancer diagnosis. You are not alone, and I promise, by consuming today's content, your soul will be fed with the hope, courage, and inspiration you need to keep fighting for today. I'm excited to be on your journey with you today. If you haven't done so already, be sure to head over to 1percentpodcast.com to sign up for our email list to see the latest news and updates for all our guests on the show. You can also check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1% Podcast. If you want to join in on some of our discussions, please join our Facebook group, the 1% Podcast. To contact me directly for content, questions, or booking events, you can email me at info@1percentpodcast. This is episode 39 of the 1% Podcast, and on my show today is Miss Katy Ursta. She's a stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma survivor. Before we get into Katy's interview, let's go over today's 1% moment of truth. I was approached recently from a close friend of mine when she was asking me about the very first episode I produced of the 1% Podcast. On the first episode, I mentioned to everyone that I was going to be sharing all of the amazing things that God's done for me and other people's lives through the podcast. Well, something crazy happened recently that I wanted to share with everyone. I shouldn't say crazy. It was a miracle in itself. So today's 1% moment of truth is going to be about tiny miracles. Just, I would say about a month or so, probably 2 months ago, I had to go for that dreaded cancer scan to make sure that all of my cancer was still gone. And if you're like me, if you've been, a survivor for several years, each time you go to the doctor, those medical bills keep piling up. And ever since I had all of my surgery and the chemo and all the things that I've had over the past 6 years, those bills still linger along, and you pay them off a little bit here and there, but you still feel like most people kind of carry a little bit of a balance as you go year to year from all your medical bills. So I recently, actually a couple years ago, I started going to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. It's not cheap to go there, but I feel like I got the best coverage and the best experience and treatment there than I'd have anywhere else. So, I think I owed maybe $4,000 to $5,000, and I set up a monthly payment plan. I pay each month towards my bills. But this past December when I went, I had an appointment with one of their financial analysts or people, whatever they're called, coordinators at the hospital. And when I got in, I was letting the lady know that I changed jobs. I no longer have this, high-paying corporate job like I used to have. I'm an entrepreneur who started my own business a little over a year ago, and obviously salary is completely different than what it used to be. So she and I talked, and she listened to me and shared with the journey that I was on and about my design business and everything. And she said, well, why don't you just give me a copy of a couple of bank statements that you have, and I'll see what I can do. So immediately I pulled up my phone, a couple of bank statements, emailed them over to her, and she's like, all right, I'll be right back. So here I am sitting there waiting for her to come back and just hoping that, the smallest percentage of money that I don't have to pay back would be a huge blessing for me. She comes back over and sits down and says, Mr. Taylor, based off your new information, I wanted to let you know that the Cancer Treatment Centers of America are going to completely wipe out your past balance, and going forward, you will have to pay absolutely nothing every time you come to the hospital. And for me, I just was overwhelmed with just a sense of gratitude and thankfulness that, that God had allowed this to happen in my life. And, if you've ever started a new business, financially things can be a struggle a little bit at first, but this right here was one less bill that I was going to have to pay every single month. And not only that, every time I had to go back to the hospital, it wasn't going to cost me anything. And, you know how expensive PET scans and CT scans and everything else are whenever you go to a hospital. But going forward, this lady basically wiped out all the debt that I had with this hospital, and going forward, I had to pay absolutely nothing. And I told her, listen, come around that corner or counter or wherever you're at onto the other side of here. You got to give me a hug. It's definitely a huge blessing for me to have you guys do this for me. So she did. And, the first call I made was to my wife, and I let her know. And it was a very emotional event for both of us to know that something like this amazing happened to us, especially right around the Christmas time. So in your life, I always feel like you're going to find what you're looking for, and you're only responsible for what you have and what you can do. And when you do that to your best ability, God will completely do the things that you aren't capable of doing. And this is one instance that I can just, ask you guys to take a look at and see how amazing something like this happened. I had no idea that this person was going to wipe out all of my debt, but I left there not only cancer-free, but debt-free. So that's today's 1% moment of truth. Let's talk a little bit about our guest from the show today, Miss Katy Ursta. At the age of 31, Katy was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma shortly after extending her maternity leave and forfeiting her health care insurance. At the time, her children were 4 months old and 4 years old. As a way of one-upping cancer, Katy started working out before and after chemo. She realized that sweating was her way of coping with her diagnosis and mentally combating the side effects of her chemo treatments. Katy is the owner of a successful health and wellness coaching business, as well as a co-founder of Chic Influencer. She is passionate about helping others confidently share their stories as a source of hope. You can learn more about Katy by following her on Instagram at Katy_Ursta. That's KATY_URSTA. And on Facebook at OneFitFighter. Her blog is also katyursta.com. So welcome my friend Katy Ursta to the show.
Hey, Katy, welcome to the 1% Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm so excited to be here. I'm doing very well. Thank you so much.
Good. I'm excited to have you as a guest. I was actually watching one of your workout videos yesterday that you had your early morning sweat videos that you put out there. So
very cool.
Good deal. So welcome to the show. I've been following you for a little bit. We have a mutual friend in common, Miss Tabitha Kavanaugh, and she had sent me your information a while back and told me a little bit about your story. And the more I've learned about you, the more I knew that your story would be so powerful to share with all of our listeners. So why don't you start off with telling everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So I am a mom of two. I have two very, very active boys. Nick is 8 years old. He is a big-time hockey player. We're always traveling around, whether it's deck hockey or ice hockey. You will always find me at the rink or the deck. And my younger son, Dom, is another hockey player. He's always keeping me on my toes. So we stay really, really busy. I am married to my high school sweetheart, Mike. We've been married for close to 12 years already. And we live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And right now it is cold outside and it is snowy. And I am very much missing the sunshine.
I can only imagine. So your story is very unique. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about, what you were diagnosed with, the age that you were at, and kind of how all that got started?
Absolutely. So I had just given birth to Dom, actually. He was about 4 months old when we received the diagnosis. But before I go into the diagnosis, I have to share that I was otherwise pretty healthy. And I was missing some very obvious signs. Some of those signs include really itchy legs. And then while I was breastfeeding my son at night, I would wake up and I would have to change my shirt because I was absolutely soaked in what I thought was milk, but it was actually just night sweats. I also had an odd rash, and then finally I had a lymph node that was really swollen, and I mistook that lymph node as mastitis. I thought it was an infection. And so for a couple of months before I was actually officially diagnosed, there were just some signs that something wasn't right. I remember right after I had given birth, it was about 6 weeks, 8 weeks after Dom was born, I started my workout routine again. And I noticed I was really struggling to breathe. I remember having I would have to just stop, and that was very unlike me. I was very active before I became pregnant with my son, and I was really in shape even while I was working out. I was still keeping up with my workouts, but I ended up being misdiagnosed with bronchitis, and I would use an inhaler, and I just remember feeling like something wasn't quite right. At the time, I was 31 years old, and I was otherwise really, really healthy. There was no rhyme, there was no reason for why cancer impacted me. But I will never forget that first day where you officially get the word. And as much as I tried to reason or say that that wasn't what was actually happening, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about this, I just remember feeling like they have it wrong, because cancer shouldn't impact people who are healthy. And that's really how I viewed it when I first started.
Yeah. To take over off that, like, why do you feel like it's such an important thing for you to be able to share your story with all of our listeners and get your version of cancer out there in so many people's ears?
I really do think everybody's battle with cancer is different. And so I never look at it as everybody should share publicly or everyone should kind of keep it to themselves. I view it as such a personal experience. And so my way of dealing with it and coping with it was often talking and writing through it. And I don't think I really understood that at the time, but I knew that right after diagnosis, the first thing that I did was go to WebMD, or I just Google searched, and I was looking, and at the time, all I was finding were stats or, basic information about what to expect when you start chemo, about hair loss, about how sick you're going to be during treatments. And instead of finding hope, I was finding a lot of, I was just finding a lot of just bad. I was just finding a lot of ugly. And I just was finding that it was putting me in this mental place of, why me? And I knew I couldn't stay there. And so writing and sharing my story kind of became my outlet. It became my therapy for knowing and acknowledging what I was going through without feeling like I was being weighed down by all of the information that was out there that circulated.
Yeah. So you feel like your story is more of a positive version of what there is out there, instead of maybe some of the negative stuff that you seen that's so easily accessible to cancer patients.
Yeah. And I didn't know anyone who had cancer. Mm-hmm. So when I was diagnosed, I was the only one. I mean, I didn't, and now as I've just been more vocal about my story, about my journey, and as I've met more people through social media, through Instagram, I see that there are so many people who are or going through exactly what I went through a couple of years ago. But I just really think that the most important thing you can lean on when you're going through treatment is hope. It is the most important thing that you can really depend on. And if you circulate yourself around everything else that's being told to you, or just all of the things that are happening to you, you can start to find yourself becoming very guarded against the idea of something good actually coming from it. So I found that to be, big. I found that to be why I was so big about writing on it.
I love that. So let's go back to your life prior to cancer. I know you were in the education field for a while. Is that correct?
Yes. And I actually think it's really cool because I've connected with so many students who are now older, who are in their 20s, and they are much older, or who have seen me battle when I wasn't in the classroom. So I was actually on a maternity leave when I was diagnosed. It's a really crazy, cool God story, but I had been working a side gig for a long time, and I was working very hard to actually make up enough income to cover the cost of an extended maternity leave. So when I was going on this maternity leave, I forfeited my healthcare benefits and I forfeited my pay as a teacher for that time being. And right when I was able to extend it, right after that is when I was actually officially diagnosed with cancer. And so there I was. I didn't have the benefits of a teacher. I didn't have the security of income with it. I just had my side income. And my side income was actually health and fitness coaching. I was helping and mentoring people through their beginning process of how to lose weight. And I was doing it with at-home programs, and I was working with challengers in virtual communities and helping them with their goals. And this whole time while all this was happening, the irony was I was going to be really sick and I was going to be bald. And all I could think about was, who would want me as a health coach. And I very clearly remember thinking to myself, like, nobody would want me as a health coach. Why would anyone look at me? I'm the complete opposite of anything health. And that year, I actually found that more people looked to me for health advice because of what I was going through. And I really think in hindsight, that's because of the way that I approached what was happening and the mindset that it took to actually battle it, and the way I was looking at how you just physically are able to move versus, I don't feel like working out. Like, it started to change people's perspective on, and I didn't even know I was doing this, but I think that people's opinions on workouts were kind of shifting as they were watching me do it when I was sick. And it would almost be as if it was like, Katie's sick and she's going through chemo and she's working out. So what excuse do I have? So I started to look at it as if, my sweat was my way of one-upping cancer. So if I could get up in the morning before a chemo treatment and work out, I was beating it. And then I would get home from chemo and I would be high on Benadryl because it was still coursing through my system. And I would go downstairs and I would push play on an at-home workout. And I just would share it. I would talk about it. And then I would also tell people, I'm struggling to get my water in today. And people would remind me. They would send me messages, or they would, post on my timeline, and they would say, Katy, don't forget, you should be chugging your water. Get this out of your system. And then it became, I'm sweating for you. And that's really where this big movement of what we call ESM, or Every Sweat Matters, kind of came from, was this idea that we were sweating for something bigger. It became more than just calories burned, or that idea that I have to lose this weight, or that I have to torture myself with a workout. People, I think, with ESM started to realize, ESM is your way of carrying someone's hard for them. So a workout can be hard. It can be intense. It can be get your blood pumping. It can cause you to sweat, and it's almost like this just hard thing that you put your body through. And instead of looking at it as I want to torture myself with a workout, or I don't feel like doing it, it became, I know that this person is going through something very hard. And if I can actually take some of that hard and actually do it in my workout, like I can carry a little bit of the load for them while they fight something so much harder, it almost gives you this extra boost of energy, and it gives you this extra boost of motivation, and it gives you this idea that I truly am bigger. Like, I can help them fight something bigger. And I want them to know that this sweat is a little bit of my way of giving back to them. So sweat became almost like a way of letting people know, hey, this is how I'm praying for you. I'm actively moving for you, as a way of letting you know that you're in my thoughts and prayers.
What a great way to create a community. Obviously, you probably get a lot less excuses why people can't work out if you're the one, battling chemo, working out. But a motivating factor that you're getting up and moving for someone who can't move. So I'm a firm believer in bearing each other's burdens. And, that may take a little bit off their mind, knowing that someone's out there and someone is, has enough, it's one thing to tell someone you're going to do something, but when they can physically see you sweating and making an effort to do something that they can't do, or do something that they wish they could do, I think that creates such a powerful community. How have you seen that community grow over the past several years?
Oh my gosh. I love the idea of knowing that it has a home base. Like, it started in my heart. It started as something that I felt, but I love that it's not at all about me, and that people have no idea that I necessarily even have anything to do with it. I love that it has grown to mean something to so many other people. When I hear someone say that they are sweating for someone, or I hear that somebody, I'm going to ESM it today, or if I just know that one of my friends is going through a hard time, all I need to do is say, hey, do you guys mind posting or sharing? My friend Julia is going through a hard time. Can we sweat for her tomorrow? And it's like, absolutely. It's just absolutely, I will sweat for her. Absolutely. You know what? This even gives me a little bit more extra motivation to push play. And I also know too, when I was going through treatment, I didn't ask necessarily for people to do it. They just started doing it. And that's the cool thing about a movement is it starts with a step. It started with just saying, like, I don't feel like it, but I know that this is my way of one-upping cancer. If I can sweat through it, I'm beating it. And it was just one statement. It was one step. And that became just the movement that people needed to feel in their hearts for their own purposes. And it's not even just about cancer anymore. You can sweat for anything. You can sweat for clarity. You can sweat for confidence. You can sweat, as therapy. It's just the idea of it's your gift to be able to move. It's not your guarantee, and it's not your given. And as somebody who's pretty young, I'm in my 30s, and I just think most 30-year-olds look at it like, I just have it. I have my health. But truly, if you don't have your health, what do you really have?
Right.
Your health is your greatest gift, and it's something that needs to be taken care of.
So if we go back to the day you were actually diagnosed, how were you told that you had cancer? I know you were kind of starting to see the B symptoms, I would say, of your disease. How were you told that you had cancer, and where were you at?
Yeah, I can take you back to that day, because it's one of those, I think as cancer survivors, I think I have blocked a lot of it out. Right. I don't know if you feel like that too, but there are some things that you could go back and you can physically feel the same emotion, and the smells, the taste, everything is exactly the same. And for me, I was going to get a mammogram because the antibiotics they'd given me for what I thought was mastitis was not clearing the lymph node. It wasn't getting better. And so I went for a mammogram, and during that mammogram, the woman said to me, we're going to actually biopsy this. We're going to actually look at this, and we're going to see what it is. And I laid on the table, and I'll never forget it. My arms were out, and there was a sweet nurse, and thank God for good nurses, like sweet nurse that was holding my left arm. And the woman, I still remember the smell. I still remember the way she looked. I still remember like the feel when she actually like grabbed my arm. She biopsied, and she asked me a very odd question. She said, do you have a cat? And I said, no. And she said, okay, we can absolutely take out cat scratch fever, which I didn't even know was a real thing. And she said, honey, I can tell you with about 99% accuracy right now that we're dealing with a type of lymphoma. And then she kind of squeezed my arm a little bit, and I haven't thought about this in a while. I turned to the other side where the nurse was, and I just like, I could feel like the tears. It was just tears rolling down my face. And the nurse was like, we'll figure it out. We will figure it out. And she used a word, we. And the word we is so interesting, because when I was battling, it felt really like isolated. You feel really isolated away from everybody else. And when you hear the word we, it's almost as if somebody is standing above you in their little world and where they are. And instead of just pulling you out of the pit, they actually get into the pit with you, and they start working with you to get out of the pit. And I think about those conversations I had at first with people. And there was a very clear distinction between people who were saying, we will fight this. We will figure this out, versus, I hope you're going to be okay. Like there was just you could hear it in their voice as if they knew like you weren't going to fight alone. And I really feel like ESM came from a place of, I don't want anyone to ever feel like they are fighting alone. And if I can sweat for them for just a couple minutes now, I want them to know I'm in the pit. Like I get it. I'm not just looking at you from above saying, I feel so bad for you down there, but I'm rooting for you and cheering for you up here. It is, I'm in the pit with you and I get it. And I just love that piece of humanity, just that word we, just knowing like you are not alone when you are fighting. That word we means so much. And even if there's a caretaker who is like thinking about this, or a friend who is watching someone battle, that word we is everything.
I love that. Just getting down and meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
Everyone, I've talked to hundreds of people who, when I ask them the same question about what the day they got diagnosed, and sometimes it takes you a couple of days to really figure out what the doctor or the nurse has spoken over you. And then sometimes it's immediate, where you immediately feel that emotion, wash over you, I'd say. But the thought that someone is right there with you, and because, you're the one that has cancer, it's no one else has it, that's around you. But the very fact that someone is willing just to get down and scoop you up and hold your hand along the way, or carry you part of the way, just really goes so deep and so far. And I love that. I love that piece of advice that you gave as well, too. If you know someone that has cancer, say, instead of, I'll never feel like hope is a plan. And like, I hope you feel better. I hope this happens. But, I always try to make it an effort to say, hey, we're going to go through this together, and whatever you need, we're going to figure it out. And I think that's such a powerful thing that you just said.
And I also think too, I don't know if you experienced this as well, but I remember hearing from people, let me know if I can do anything. And as much as I appreciate it, when I was battling, I was never thinking about what could someone do for me.
Right.
It was just the people who did. Like the people who set up meal trains, the people who came in and folded laundry, the people who came in and watched my kids, the people who came in, like family and friends who just did, not because we were asked. So there's a difference between the sidelines and being in the game. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you say to someone, let me know what I can do, instead just do.
Right.
Just do, whether it's just sending a care package or a card to let them know that you are thinking of them. I feel like those are just these little things that put you with them. And it means it's the biggest, I don't know. I think those things matter. I just really do.
You saying that brought back a memory. I had a coworker of mine who I'm really close with. She was probably 7 months pregnant, and she came over and cleaned my entire house because I was going through chemo and I didn't have enough energy to barely make it up the stairs. And she came over and cleaned my entire house. I just remember how much that meant to me. She didn't ask me if she could do it. She said, I'm coming over on this day, to clean your house for you. And it's so amazing. You think about people like that in your life. Like, I think everybody should strive to be that person that's really going to take an active approach to what you're doing. Whenever you were going through your treatment, describe your treatment regimen that you were on.
Sure. So I was going through treatment every other week. I would go into the UPMC Cancer Center, we were very blessed. It was only about 15, 20 minutes from our house. And I would go in every other week, depending on my blood levels, depending on if I was actually able to receive treatments. So I would go in and I would be hooked up to the chemo, and it was about a 2 to 3 hour process by the time all of the drugs kind of went through my system. It was a drip. So it was, and I don't remember the technical names. My husband kind of took the role of knowledge while I just took the role of battle. And it was a treatment called ABVD. And I would go through the chemo, and then I would be pretty sick for about a day or two, but it wasn't intolerable. It was a lot of resting. It was a lot of just kind of being still and sleeping, or just trying to quietly sort of move around or just get my energy back. And then I would slowly start to get that energy back. And by the time I felt pretty good, it was time for the next treatment again. I was very fortunate that I was able to take pretty good care of myself, just mentally and physically during that time. And I would often, I would still do yoga. I would still be at home, just kind of trying to just muster up strength to get through. But I did take pretty good care of myself. Some people call it, like with the treatment that I had, some people refer to it as like almost like being pregnant. I would not say that. It was just extreme fatigue for a couple of days and nausea, and then I would be okay. But I think that's scary, right? Before you get into chemo treatments, you wonder, what's this going to be like?
Right.
What is this going to feel like? And so you can take all of this time and think about it and worry about it. And instead, I almost would urge people to just stop and let it be what it is going to be. And just throughout the treatments, just take it one day, one step, 1 hour at a time.
I think you can prepare for side effects with medicines and things like that they give you, but you cannot fight a side effect of something. It is going to be what it's going to be. And some things affect people differently. But as you were going through all your treatments, what would you say your lowest moment was? Whether it was physical or more emotional, and sometimes it's a collection of moments. What would you say was one of the lowest moments or collection moments that you had during your treatment?
It was probably around treatment 10 of 12. And I was tired. I was really tired, and I was tired of people taking care of me. I wanted my home back. People were in and out of the house a lot. I wanted to be able to hold my kids. I wanted to be able to play with them. And I just was tired. And I don't know. I don't think that I can explain what it was that made it okay. But every time I would feel that, it was just this peace that, like, it just surpassed any type of understanding. It just was a wave of just, okay, you can't, I can. And so I just would often just let it be what it was and give myself like the grace of resting and not being sad in it, just of resting. And I find that when you get to that place of being incredibly tired, and I think that's what chemo does, it really does wear you down. It breaks you down, emotionally too, as well as physically. That's what it does. I mean, to beat the cancer, you have to break down the bad. Right. And in order to do that, you are going to be tired. You are going to be fatigued. So when you are tired, instead of like trying to fight it, just let yourself rest it out. Just let yourself be at peace with it, be at calm with it. I don't know if that really answers your question, but because I can't really explain it. And and I'm sure other survivors out there are like, yeah, it's just, there's a peace that comes with knowing that it's in somebody else's hands and you're taken care of. Yeah.
When we get those moments of brokenness like that, where there's nothing you can do and you find peace, or God supplies you the peace during your broken times, that's a hard thing to explain to some people, because you have every reason not to be peaceful and every reason not to think things are going to be okay. Did you have some sort of intuition that you were going to make it through all of this?
Oh yeah. I tell people this story all the time and they're just like blown away by it. My husband and I, we were driving to Kalahari. It's a water park near our home. And we knew that we were getting ready to start the battle. I had just had my bone marrow biopsy, so the staging was coming in. If you're not really familiar with all of that, basically it worked from the biopsy, the diagnosis, and then it was staged to see if it was actually in my bone too, like in my bones. So you have to go through what's called a bone marrow biopsy. And so when I had that done, my husband and I decided, we knew no matter what, I was going to be starting some type of treatment the next week. So we took our kids away for a weekend, just figuring no one would bother us, no one would call us. And it was Sunday, and the doctor called us, and we were on our way to Kalahari, and I couldn't believe he called. And as soon as he called, I knew it was pretty serious. I knew that he was wanting to start immediately. Picked up the phone, and I love my oncologist, wonderful man. He said, Katy, we're dealing with stage 4. And my husband was driving the car, and the boys were in the back seat. And I just said, okay, and what now? And he said, you need to come in on, it was either Monday or Tuesday, and we're going to go over exactly how this is going to work. He had already set up my port installation, and a port is, for those of you going through chemo or are about to embrace chemo or maybe not familiar with it, a port is basically, it's a way for them to access your bloodline and just directly instead of poking and prodding into your arm all the time. So it's actually an installation. It goes into your body. So mine was right on my chest, and I had it there for quite a few months, but the reason I'm sharing this is because I knew that we were starting. Like, I knew that Monday my life would never be the same. And so Sunday, we had just gotten that diagnosis, and I sat down on a bed. My husband went to get the luggage, and I sat on the bed of the hotel, and there was a Bible in between the two beds, 2 double beds, Bible. And usually the Bible is tucked in. Right. It's usually like inside the drawer. Like, it's usually not out in a hotel room. And it was on top. And I looked at it, and I saw a ladybug just walk right across it. And again, I say it again, like that peace that surpasses any understanding. I knew. And my husband walked into the room, and I said, I just want you to know we're going to be fine. I don't know what's going to happen. And it was like that. It was that immediate. I was just so sure. And he even says now, I've never seen you so sure of anything. And there are so few things in this life that you're certain of, but I've never been more certain of anything, that this was not just going to be cured, but something great was going to come from this battle. And I feel that he just used that battle as a way to just see him. There's no way that you can look at just what has come from all of this and not see him through all of it. So that's kind of it. Yeah. Saw a ladybug just crawling across the bed.
No, I love that. I've heard so many stories like that. And I have something similar of mine as well too, where you just know. It's like, it's hard to explain. I was trying to explain it to several people, and it's hard unless you just experience it. But like, I just, at that point where hey, you're healed. When I was done with all my treatment, it's like, okay, you're healed. And I'm like, okay, it's weird. I remember driving in the car, I mean, like, that's a weird feeling to know. And, here we are 6 years later, and it's still over with. But, this becomes part of your life. It's not the defining moment of who you are, I would say. It just becomes a part of your journey, and you pick up and run with all of this ever since then. If you had 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you could give a young adult right now, maybe in their early 30s like you were, that's been diagnosed with cancer, what would you say to them that you maybe wanted to hear whenever you were diagnosed?
Oh my gosh, lean into your community. Let people help you. You do not have to do everything. You are not meant to do everything, and people want to help you. That's definitely the first thing that I would say. And then the second piece of advice I have is prayer. I mean, just prayer, because most people will not understand what you're going through, but he does.
Right. So tell us about your life now. Like, obviously you're at a way different position. You're a health and wellness coach. You've got a huge following online. Tell us about your life now after cancer. What's transpired, and how far are you out from being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer?
So I didn't know that the journey after cancer was kind of messy too. So I dealt with some PTSD afterwards. I went to therapy for quite some time afterwards, because while I was going through cancer, I never really processed what was happening. You almost go through the step by step. And so the first thing I have to tell people is, it's okay if afterwards it feels like I need help. Right. Get help. And not in the, I need chemo, but you almost need you need to eradicate the emotional scars of cancer.
Yes.
And they are really, really messy and hard to deal with. Even now, my son, Nick, who is 8, he was 4 at the time, and he is asking the questions, hard questions about cancer. He is asking if kids get cancer. He's asking if my cancer will come back, and how do I know if it isn't going to come back? And navigating through that post-cancer life, there is no guidebook for that. And in fact, that's the one thing I don't think a lot of people talk about. And it's funny, I look back and I say, like, I was Google searching whenever I was diagnosed, and I find myself doing the same thing of life post-cancer is just the messiness afterwards. It's not like you wipe your hands of it and then you're cancer free and then life goes on.
Right.
There's a lot that needs to be felt and dealt with, and just almost like grasping, like this happened. Like, I lived this. I went through this. Like, this is my journey. And there's almost sometimes this need for me to like not own it. It's almost like I understand I went through it. I see the pictures of it, but sometimes I forget, like, I really did go through that. And so it is messy post-cancer. But life post-cancer has also been really beautiful. I have been in the health and fitness journey, my own health and fitness journey. I still coach women, mostly women, to really focus on sweating for something bigger and taking good care of themselves, so much more than weight loss. I've been able to work with quite a few nonprofits. ESM has helped raise over $70,000 for cancer research, specifically with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So life post-cancer has been blessed, incredibly, incredibly blessed. Messy, yes, but blessed, absolutely.
So if someone wants to hire you for your coaching and stuff, let's talk about that. Like, how do they get in touch with you? And tell us a little about your website and all the things that you have going on.
Sure. So there's a couple of ways you can contact me. My best friend and I, we just opened a new business called Chic Influencer. It is a business designed to help female entrepreneurs really start and scale their businesses. And we focus mostly on social media, how to capitalize on that. But as for my health and fitness part, you can find me at Katy Ursta on Instagram, and also katyursta.com as well. So you can find out more about what I do there and connect with me there. And my stories on IG are always a hot mess. And I always get messages about them, but yeah.
That's real life though. One good thing about your IG is you post real life. It's not this glamorous, photographer over there taking photos of you. It's real life. Workout, sweat. When people, I tell everybody, when you're working out, you're getting weaker, but afterwards you get tremendously amounts of strength from breaking your body down. So it has to build itself back up. And those moments when you're breaking your body down, I mean, if you're doing it right, it's not about looking pretty and everything matching in the gym. It's really about attacking your body and forcing it to get better, which I think is so amazing. So if I wanted to be a part of the ESM movement, what would I need to post on, or how would I post, or what would I need to post on social media?
Oh, I love seeing these, and I just love hearing the stories of people who are sweating for something bigger. All you need to do is hashtag ESM or hashtag Every Sweat Matters, and give me a tag at Katy Ursta. I think it's at Katy_Ursta. Pretty sure. I don't even know off the top of my head.
Well, Katy, the last question I ask everyone before we end is, what's the best thing that cancer has done for your life?
Oh my gosh, it gives you just a different perspective. It gives you this understanding of time that most people my age don't get, is you are not guaranteed. It is a gift. Every day you have is such a gift. And there are times in my business or in life in general where it's easy for me to get stressed. And I always go back to that perspective. And I say, in the grand scheme of things, there are things that matter. And then there are things that matter. And I just know that at the end of the day, it won't matter if I didn't close the sale, or it won't matter if I didn't get the post up. It won't matter if, it just didn't work out the way that I thought, or I didn't get the title, or I didn't get this or that or the other thing in the grand scheme of things. There are just things that matter, and there are things that matter. And time, gosh, it's such a gift. It's such a gift, not a guarantee.
I love that. Well, Katy, thank you for being a guest on the show today. I'll drop links to all of your Instagram handles, and we'll talk more about the ESM movement. I'll put posts in there about that as well, too, so people can get in touch with you, and your website, katyursta.com as well. I've enjoyed speaking to you. I admire you. I admire everything that you've done. I really admire your attitude, and it means a lot for you to really dig in deep with people and be the person that you wanted when you needed it the most. And, I used to think everyone was called to be an advocate after their treatment and stuff, but not everyone is, because they can't really handle that, or they don't have the desire to that, but you do, and you do it phenomenally well. And I appreciate you. And I'm just so thankful. I'm thankful you're alive. I'm thankful for your story. I'm thankful just that so many people are going to get to hear, about the grace and mercy of your life. And that means so much. And you give people something to hope for, and you give people something to do as well. So I absolutely love that. So thank you again for being a guest on the show. I appreciate you spending time with me this morning, and we'll be in touch with you really soon. Okay.
Thank you. And congratulations to you on this wonderful podcast too. Great things.
We appreciate you spending time with us on today's episode and encourage you to continue the conversation to help you keep pushing forward. For more resources based on today's episode, as well as ways to recommend a guest and connect to Truett personally, head over to 1%podcast.com. Be sure to join us next time for more stories of inspiration right here with Truett Taylor on the 1% Podcast.